afternoon. Welcome to the Reidsville Chamber of Commerce Topics at 12, which is sponsored by Susan Reagan and the RCC Small Business Center, presented by Ruben Gonzales. We're going to be discussing your business now and after COVID-19. Thank you to all of our partners, Team Reidsville and Rockingham County Economic Development and Small Business Office, and the other chambers of commerce, the Eden and the Western Chambers of Commerce, for helping us present this. And of course, Susan, because without her, we would not be able to do this. So thank you for joining us, and we are going to turn it right over to our presenter. Ruben, take it away.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us. I'm Ruben Gonzales. I've been working with Susan for a couple of years now, I guess. And yeah, she asked me to present on some of these COVID-19 questions and transitions and pivoting that all small businesses are going through right now. I actually work with a couple of organizations that do small business assistance. So I've seen quite a few businesses that are trying to get by with the COVID-19. Unfortunately, a number of them have closed. Most have closed just temporarily and trying to get reopened again. And some have stayed open through the whole thing. In fact, we have a couple that have actually made more money than they were making before. So what is happening? How could that happen? So we're going to kind of look at some of those. We're going to look at some trends today. We're going to look at markets and how they change, and then more importantly, we're going to look at what you can do as a small business person if you're in business now, and if you're being affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, what you can do. Also, what you can do to prepare for your future operations. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. So I have a little slide presentation I'll try to go through. So it's business as usual right now or coming up in the future. So obviously for a lot of businesses, business is not as usual. The big thing in any successful business is what's the demand for your particular product or service. So when we have a pandemic like this or a great recession like we had in 2008, we find that the demand for certain products and services, it changes. And I think you can see that. A little bit later on, I'm going to have a list of the types of businesses that are still going strong. And I think a lot of those will be pretty easily recognizable as something that would probably still be able to do business even in a pandemic. Of course, in a pandemic, we're looking at cleaning services, as you can imagine. So yeah, so it's always going to be demand for a particular product or service. And the question is, really, what do you have? And how can you pivot? How can you change to meet the demand? Usually when you start a business, I always advise my clients to be as flexible as possible. I always advise to have a really diverse mix of products or a diverse mix of services, because you never can tell how things are going to change. So for instance, we'll take an industry that was really hit really hard, the restaurant industry. If you had already offered a variety of services within your restaurants, then we have found that those restaurants were able to, up to now, have withstood the pandemic crisis. For instance, if you already had delivery service or you already had a drive-through window, then you would have been in better position, even with the dynamic change in the restaurant industry. But if you weren't flexible, if you didn't have a variety of services when the pandemic hit, for instance, you weren't already set up with a to-go window and you weren't already set up with delivery service. Well, when the pandemic hit, you weren't able to take advantage of those alternatives, those other options you would have had to generate revenue. So some of your restaurants who haven't had dine-in service, for many months now, have still gone along pretty much as before because they had delivery or they had drive-through. So being flexible at the start, being flexible in your base operation allows you to add services as demand changes. It allows you to add products as demand changes. So the big question right now is, how has demand changed and how has demand affected your business? Now, looking forward, even though you weren't able to change and pivot immediately after the COVID-19 virus hit, looking at the demand and the changes in your industry, it should allow you to make some decisions now so that you'll be in better position to open maybe before the pandemic is over, and certainly you'll be in better position when the pandemic is over completely. Yeah, depending on what experts you're listening to, we could be stuck in a semi-pandemic state as far as business goes for another year. So do you want to wait another year, or do you want to take a good hard look at the demand right now and see what's available for you and see how you can pivot and starting offering products and services that are going to be in demand? I'll talk a little bit more about demand as we go along today. So it's business as usual. So how about your cash flow? What has changed there? Cash flow is a huge hair-brainer of success in a business. You have to have cash on hand. And this is a perfect example of the COVID-19. Businesses that were caught short of cash have had a hard time, and they struggled. Now, if you were lucky enough to get one of the PPP, the Payment Protection Programs grants, or one of the other grants from the federal government, well, then you had cash on hand. But you shouldn't be leaving your livelihood to the chance of a government program coming to your rescue. You should already have been saving up quite a bit of cash flow on hand. You should already had some operating capital sitting someplace so that if you did hit a little downturn in your particular industry, that you were able to dip into that reserve to help offset costs, offset expenses as you move through a slow stage. So those businesses that did have some money put aside, they've been able to survive. Businesses that didn't, they've had a hard time. Again, if you're able to get a government program, well, it helps you as well. But as I mentioned, you shouldn't set your business up to only survive if the government comes to your rescue. You should really be taking some steps. You should have taken steps before the pandemic, and certainly now, if you survive the pandemic, make sure you're taking some steps to put some money aside. So I can give you an example. We had a lady who is in the HVAC industry, and she had a government contract for a county building. She won the contract for the HVAC, but when the pandemic hit, her supplier, which was a small supplier of materials, he went under or suspended his business. So she was not able to get supplies from her regular supplier. So she tried to go out to other suppliers. Unfortunately, she wasn't known at other suppliers, so they weren't going to advance her any credit. And she didn't have cash on hand to purchase the materials for the project outright. So she was stuck. Even though willing and able to work, she was not able to get the materials she needed for a project, and the project was several $100,000 worth of HVAC installment. And so she lost that contract. She lost that contract, not so much that she wasn't able to get credit. She lost that contract because she didn't have any cash on hand. She was not prepared. So you have to look at your cash flow as businesses change, as demand change, and in this case, business change and demand change because of the COVID-19. So yeah, you have to look at your cash flow. So you should be looking at your specific expenses on an operating basis, and you should take a critical list at those, and you should be cutting back. You should have already made those steps. If you haven't done those steps already, yeah, you should be cutting back. And one of the big things you cut back, of course, might be your individual salary. You can't be taking $3,000 or $4,000 out of your business on a monthly basis if you don't have the necessary revenue coming in to cover that. So you need to take a critical look at your cash flow, see what kind of funds are going out, see where you can cut back a little bit, and so forth and so on. Most businesses were able to adapt. And the quicker you did it during the pandemic, the better off you were going to be. If you let it go by 3 or 4 months, before really taking a critical look at it, well, you put yourself into that much deeper of a hole. Of course, if you're negatively cash flowing, if revenues are not meeting your expense obligations, you've been going in the hole now for some time. So most astute businessmen would already taken a look at their cash flow, cutting back where they could. And looking at that now, it gives you an opportunity to budget going forward to where it's going to be when business starts back. So if you're going through limited business now with business just getting by, receipts are matching expenses, you're barely getting by what we call a break-even point, then looking at that as business is now, you can kind of project forward and say, well, if business just picks up, what can I add back? Can I start taking a salary? Can I go back to marketing? I'm going to talk about marketing in just a second. So having a very hands-on to your cash flow and your expenses and how they match up to sales is a very important operating management process you go through. And the more hands-on you have, the more you realize what's going on within your business as far as cash out goes, the better off you're going to be. So what has changed? How much down is your cash flow, your revenue, and what can you do on the expense side to get your monthly losses down to as small as possible. The next bullet here talks about marketing. Since an industry changes, then you have to take a critical look at your marketing. You're probably still going to have to market. It's pretty tough to continue along on the same marketing platforms with the same message you've always had when demand has changed. So when demand has changed, then you need to look at your marketing, especially the message in your marketing. All business has a message. Usually the message is, what makes your business outstanding, what makes your business different from other businesses. Your message sometimes contains your competitive advantage over your competition. But as markets change because of demand, then your message might have to change. There's no use sending out an old message if it's not going to be appropriate for the current conditions in the marketplace. So you really have to look at your message and make sure it's still an appropriate message. Sometimes when the demand change and you have to change too, as far as the messaging in your business, hopefully you have something that you can bring to the table that shows that you still have an edge on your local competition. For instance, if you were in the cleaning business, maybe you have some eco-friendly cleaning materials that you're going to be using, something that your competition doesn't have. If your competition doesn't deliver, now that there's a pandemic and you bring on delivery as an added service you've added, that gives you a little bit of edge. So now that becomes a message in your advertising. Hey, look at us now, we can deliver. Maybe you're going to have curbside pickup that you did not have before. So that would be the message in your advertising. Maybe you never had online ordering, but now you do. So that would be your new message and your new marketing plan to meet the new demands of your business. So whatever pivot you make in terms of variety of products and services, or maybe operational, whatever that change is to meet the new demands of the industry, whatever that change is, that's going to be your new message in your marketing campaign. No use giving out the old message. The old messages might not be relevant anymore. So you're talking about a new message to let people know how your business has changed in these current market conditions. So you need to look at your marketing plan, make sure it's still appropriate as far as the message goes. Also make sure it's still appropriate as far as the delivery method that you're sending it out. Maybe your old way of delivering the message, maybe that's not going to hold up anymore. Every business has different marketing plans. Every business has different messages. So you need to take a critical look at those to make sure they can also change with the changes in demand for products and services. Same thing goes with your technology. Hopefully your technology is up to date to begin with, but as industries change and demand changes, then you have to come up with new technology. So what's the newest technology now? I guess the newest technology now is people are going to be ordering more things online than ever before. So hopefully you have that capacity. So that goes back to your original business model. If originally you had the ability for people to order online and for you to take payments online, then you're a better position to withstand the pandemic and the way it had its negative effect on business. But if you hadn't had that already set up, then you have a hard time now pivoting towards what you really need as far as technology goes. Unfortunately, I just spoke with somebody not too long ago, just a few days ago, that they never had a website. So my advice to everybody when I have clients getting ready to open up a business is you should have that website up and running even before you open your business. So if that businessman I talked to recently, if he had already had a website, he might have already had the necessary technology in place to take orders online for people to pay online. Even if you didn't deliver, I mean, it's a lot easier to go out and throw the stuff in the back of your car and you deliver it yourself in your personal vehicle. But if you don't have a way to take orders online, then you're a little bit behind the curve. Now, an astute person can probably pivot pretty quickly to set that up on their website. And that's not really the problem. Even if it took you a week or two to get that running like you should, that's not the real problem there. The real problem is none of your customers know it because you never had it before. So now you got to go through an education process with all your customers, telling them, oh, by the way, we can take online orders now. And no telling how long that will take to get that message out, and even longer still for your customers to get used to ordering online. So you can see that if you had already been set up with that from day one, pivoting to a majority of your sales brought in via an online ordering platform would have been a lot easier. Now, looking forward, make sure you have it. Because as I mentioned, the pandemic is going to stick with us for quite some time. During this process of businesses adapting to the pandemic, we are discovering that a lot of technology changes are going to stay with us even after the pandemic. If you think about Amazon and some other delivery services, they were already pretty heavily into very successful operations as far as delivery goes. The pandemic has just made it even more necessary. It's even made more delivery and ordering online necessary than before. So you have to be prepared going forward that people might not start all of a sudden returning to storefronts or sidewalk fronts to go into businesses. They might continue to stay with ordering online for some time, if not permanently. So pivoting at this point, even if you haven't set up, even if you hadn't had it set up already, yeah, go ahead and get it set up. At least you can put it to work while you're still struggling during this pandemic stages now. But you should anticipate that ordering online is going to stay with the business for a long time, even after the pandemic is over. So if you want to say if there's anything you can take advantage of during this pandemic, is bringing new technology, new processes and operational processes online that are effective for the pandemic situation we're in, but also going forward are going to be effective and needed even after the pandemic is over or the pandemic really slows down. So technology, yeah, you need to make sure your technology is right. Make sure your technology is right. And this is all not rocket science. Like I said, it's not rocket science to have delivery service or curbside pickup or something like that. It's not rocket science, and everybody's doing it. My wife and I got something from Best Buy last month, and it was curbside pickup. You order it online, pay for it online, you drive to the curbside, you park at one of the signs that said, call us at this number and let us know what space you're in, and then they bring it out. I hit the button on the back of the Traverse, the tailgate came up, and they loaded the thing in and closed the tailgate. Completely hands off. And yeah, so curbside pickup, are you ready for that? If not, you have some budgeting to do to make sure you have the necessary funds to make any additions to your business. And if you haven't had the technology in place, well, you have a little homework to do to get your technology up to snuff so you can be ready to take advantage of the newest forms of ordering and sales. That has a lot to do with staffing. Staffing is the next bulletin here, next bullet point here. Staffing needs change in the new business environment. So hopefully you're taking a look at that. The we found the payroll protection program kind of took care of itself. So even though companies got money to keep payroll as they were, a lot of employees just decided, well, that's not for me anymore. I'm going someplace else. So even though they got money to keep payroll as it was, not all payrolls remain stagnant. Payrolls change even with people who got money for their payroll. So you have to take a critical look at your payroll. Hopefully you have enough people on hand. Hopefully the people you have on hand have the necessary skills, education, and experience to adapt to the changing demands that you're going to have to put your business through. You can't have a bunch of old fogies like myself. Can't have a bunch of old fogies in the background of your business holding you up. You have to have enough people on hand that are willing to change and have the techno savvy to go along with those changes as well. So you need to take a critical look at your staff. A lot of businesses I work with, they might have had 6, 7, 8 people on staff, and so instead of laying off 4 or 5, they put everybody on part-time. They let everybody go to part-time. What happens, of course, is that people can't exist on part-time, so they quit on their own. But at least you're not forced to pick out who you're going to let go, who you're going to cut back. So putting everybody on part-time allows the people to say, well, I can hold out in part-time, and other people will say, I can't hold out with part-time wages, so I just have to go someplace else. So when that happens, you're able to add hours back to the people you do have. So if you're still moving along at some percentage of your original sales, so which allows you to keep some percentage of your original workforce, you can also do cutbacks in time to make sure your staffing expense on a monthly basis stays within reason, so that you're not continually losing money that you don't have to lose. So take a look at your staff, both in terms of who you have, their technical expertise, as well as their ability to work flexible hours. Inventory. Inventory is not going to stay as usual. Hopefully you were able to cut back some. I mean, if you were doing some $1,000s worth of business and you needed X amount of inventory, well, now you get X minus pandemic inventory. Hopefully if you had a good supply of inventory on hand, and I found this working with a number of businesses, that the inventory that they had brought in on the 1st of March, when the pandemic hit in mid-March, that inventory lasted through April and May even. I have a manufacturer who just happened to put a big order in and actually paid for it 1st of March. And he's had enough supply on hand for his product he makes to last him up until now even, where usually he would already order at least twice more. So even though business cut back, having already paid for the inventory up front, that inventory was allowing him to stay in business, stay moving along, even though his products are moving at a lot lesser pace than they were before the pandemic. But because he had prepaid for a large amount of inventory, his monthly costs went down because he'd already paid for his inventory. So his books actually look pretty good. When you look at his profit loss statement, they look pretty good because he was able to adapt in terms of cost, inventory, which is about 30% of a product. And then he made some cutbacks in payroll because he had less business, obviously. He put a lot of people on part-time and he cut his salary out. He was fortunate enough, he made money in previous years. He was able to put some money aside. So he didn't need a monthly check coming from the business. So actually he's breaking even. And I wouldn't say he's happy about it. He's happy he made the necessary changes in previous years so he could take advantage of them now. So he's not happy about the current state of sales, but he's happy about the current state of his operation, being able to maintain it as it is, looking forward to the pandemic, as well as looking at the things we've already talked about. What are the changing demands within this industry, and what can he bring online now to help increase sales? We'll talk a little bit more about those things in a little bit. But yeah, you need to look at your inventory. Make sure your inventory is where you need it to be, because it can be a big drain on your monthly cash flows if you're having to buy large amounts of inventory. So when business slows down, we expect inventory costs to slow as well, inventory expense to slow as well. And we're back to this working capital I mentioned previously. Yeah, you have to have working capital on hand. Now, if you don't have working capital on hand in the business account, hopefully you have some cash that you can get into on the personal side. So, You think about it, I don't care if you're a corporation or an LLC, you know, if you are one with your business, especially small businesses, you are one with your business. So, you know, your personal assets are going to have to be used to get by the pandemic. So as fast, hopefully you were able to move quicker to reduce cost so that the drain on your personal capital, you know, wasn't very large. So yeah, you need to be prepared for that. And moving forward, as I try to mention a couple of times, as you move forward, realize the importance of having working capital on hand so that you can have some fallback position when business slows down. Last thing you want to do is first thing business slows down, you have to close. Well, you wouldn't have to close if you had working capital. You can maintain some staff, and you can take some time to retool your business to take advantage of the new demands out there, new marketing messages you have to put together, and maybe new technology and inventory you need to bring in. But you can't do any of that if you don't have working capital. So having a working capital surplus is an important tool in the toolbox for having a successful business. I will say in general, most economic development, business development type people say as far as working capital goes, they say you should have about 3 months of capital on hand, enough to cover your expenses for 3 months. If you think about it, that could be a pretty large amount of money you need to set aside. But here's the perfect example. You know, we've been out of business for 3 or 4 months. So, you know, that working capital you had put aside, 3 months worth, would have come in handy for a lot of businesses. So going forward, thinking about that too, make sure you put some working capital aside. And you know what, in reality, when you have 3 months of working capital set aside, it actually stretches a lot longer, because that budget for working capital is based on your current expenses. So based on your, before the pandemic, so based on current expenses before the pandemic, whatever they happen to be, the advice is to have 3 months of that on hand for working capital emergency use. But in reality, you start cutting back as soon as business slows down, as like we've talked about before. So that 3 months of working capital you set aside could actually stretch to 5 or even 6 months. Hopefully, you know, over a far enough period of time that you're able to make some serious changes in your operation to bring in new materials, new inventory, new marketing messages, so that you can start doing a little bit more business even during the pandemic. So that working capital that you have set aside can be stretched to even longer to help you be more prepared to keep you in business for a longer period of time. So yeah, having working capital on hand, having a reserve on hand for emergencies is an important tool in the toolbox of keeping your business open. And we see these major changes in the economy at many times during a business's life. Even though the last big one was 2008, which was 12 years ago, that's not a long time in the life of a business. That's just 12 years. 2008, the Great Recession. Now it's 2020. That's 12 years ago. So, you know, after the Great Recession of 2008, those businesses that had working capital on hand were able to get back open quickly and move ahead. Those businesses that didn't have working capital during 2008, they went out of business, and some of them never came back. So with that lesson in hand, you know, you should have been prepared for 2020. You should have had working capital already set aside, so when the pandemic hit, you're sitting in a better position to withstand that, just like businesses withstood the 2008 recession. And business cycles always hit industries at different times and different sectors of the industry. So you never can tell. It might not be 12 years to the next big pandemic or the next big recession. It might only be 5 or 6 years. So you need to put some money ahead. So once you start getting back to regular business, once you start producing regular sales and regular profit, you need to start putting some money aside so that when the next big downturn in the economy comes, whether that's based on a recession, economic recession, or whether that's based on a pandemic, you're in a better position to withstand the downturn in business for a period of time, which allows you to keep your business open and be that much more ready to reopen when the emergency passes. So yes, working capital, extremely important tool in the business success toolbox. So when local markets change, whether that's via a pandemic or via a recession, new demands open up. New demands open up. I'm going to talk about some of these in the next slide, but yeah, even within industries, new things opened up. We already mentioned, in the restaurant industry, how it went from dining room dining to, delivery or, drive-through. So yeah, industries change and you have to be really flexible. Hopefully, as I mentioned, you are flexible enough when you set up your operation to take advantage of a variety of services and a variety of products that you could sell. So it's pretty tough to be successful if you only have one product or one service. It is very difficult because when an economy changes, when a marketplace changes, it might change the demand for that one product you have. And if that happens, you're out of business. Just like that. So the more variety you have, the more flexible you have as bringing in a variety of products and services, the more likely you're going to have something that even though the market changes and even though the demand for one product or service decreases, hopefully you have other products and services that still maintain their demand. And there are businesses that have maintained demand through this pandemic. I mentioned janitorial cleaning services. I'm going to mention a few others in a little bit. We're going to take a good look at those. But yeah, demands change. So the more variety you have in your products and services, the better off you're going to be. I call it having a varied mix of products and services. Every business should have a varied mix of products and services. That allows you to withstand a lot of the changes. Again, if you only have one product, only one service, it's pretty tough to get by. So having a variety of products and services and remaining flexible allows you to capitalize on the new trends. And what's the new trends out there? There are some stuff going on. So I read an article not too long ago about a lady. She was she had a boutique, but she also sold online. So she was ready. In fact, I think she says she sold just as much online as she ever sold in her boutique. But the people like to come in from time to time, try things on, but then they go home and they would order online. Sometimes they ordered online to get a discount. I think she had an awards program. If you ordered online, you saved up awards, and that enabled you to get something at a future date cheaper or half price or something like that. So yeah, she had a complete promotion, online to drive people to her website so people could order. But her boutique was based on evening wear, basically evening wear. Fancy diners, nice shoes, nice evening clothes, that kind of stuff. Of course, that kind of stuff just dried up. But she had a varied menu of products that she was selling. Every business has a menu. In a restaurant, it's a menu of the food dishes you're selling. In a plumbing business, it's a menu of the types of things you can fix. In construction, it's a menu of the types of houses you can build. In a remodeling business, it's a menu of the types of remodeling jobs you can build. In apps, it's a menu of the different apps you can help people develop, and so forth and so on. Every business has a list of menu items, a list of services they provide, or a list of products. So the more varied that menu is, the more able you are to meet the new demands and new trends. So this lady with the boutique found out that she had a varied mix of products already. And like my friend in the manufacturing business, she also had quite an inventory on hand of some of these things. So she noticed online that people were ordering different things. They were no longer ordering the high-heeled shoes for evening wear. They were no longer ordering the fancy dresses to go out to parties and concerts and operas. No, they were ordering other things. For instance, they were ordering slippers because they were staying at home a lot longer. They wanted to be comfortable as they stayed in their slippers. So her slipper sales went up almost 200% from what they were before the pandemic. They were also ordering sleepwear because they were spending more time, again, being comfortable at home. and so forth and so on. There's a lot of examples like that. But she was in position. She was in position because she had already had an online marketplace set up on her website, and she already had a varied inventory. So she didn't know there was a pandemic coming. Nobody knows when a major downturn is going to come. You can almost bet that after 10 years, you're going to see some kind of downturn. So if you plan to be open longer than 10 years, be prepared by having a varied mix of products and services so that when the demand for one of your products or services goes down, you have other products or services that are going to go up. So keeping advantage of the new trends. And the same thing for new markets. So you have products and services, that's going to open new markets for you. So, but you will not be able to take advantage of the new markets if you're not open. You have to be open. If you're forced to close because of the change of demands, the new markets that do open, you won't be able to take advantage of. You'll be sitting at home saying, oh my gosh, I wish I'd be open and I can really do that. But don't wait for the downturn in the marketplace. Be looking at the marketplace and be prepared, because the next downturn in the economy, the next pandemic, the Great Recession, the next Great Recession, the next war, the next coup of our government is just around the corner. So you want to make sure you're ready to pivot. So that's what our next bullet is here, the last bullet on this slide. Can you pivot? Can you change? And we say pivot because, like I said, you have to pivot on a dime. The faster you change, the more likely you are to save your business. So nowadays, today, if you're in the pandemic, can you pivot now? If not, what can you do to prepare your business so that you can make a pivot at this time? And can you prepare your business after the pandemic so that when the next emergency hits, can you pivot at that time? So being able to pivot has a lot to do with being flexible in your business, being open-minded. And we used to say in the old days, can you think out of the box? Can you pivot? Can you be ready for the changes that are coming? And more than likely, something else will come in another 10 years. So what kind of businesses are still thriving through all this And this is not just, I told you so, you should be in one of these businesses. No, you look at the thriving businesses that are thriving now and say, well, can my business include some of these services? Can the current business I have include some of these products? It would be nice if you already had a business that can do some of these things. But if not, can you pivot at this point to bring these things on? So just because I tell you that cleaning services are in great demand right now and they're thriving, and maybe your business had never been set up for cleaning, but can you pivot to that? How quickly can you pivot for that? If there's going to be cost involved, do you have the necessary working capital to make that work? So this look at these, I think I got 18 of these thriving businesses on here. When you look at these, it's not just to say you need to change your business and close one business and open one of these. No, a big thing is, can you include some of these things in the current thing you're currently selling, or your current services that you're providing? So yeah, cleaning services. So is that something you can pivot to? Is that an additional service that your existing business can provide? Delivery services. So this is not only the delivery of things that you're selling, but can you deliver things that other businesses are selling? Can you expand your business that way? So people are demanding more delivery services. So maybe it's not just enough that you deliver what you're selling. Maybe the demand is not as great, but if you have a delivery van, if you have an experienced staff that's used to navigating cost effectively within the community to have delivery service, maybe you can add delivery for other businesses that don't currently have it. So adding delivery services, not only for what you're doing, or maybe more generally what can be used by other people, could help you in the long run, adding that extra income to your sales line. Yeah, all businesses that have drive-in services or curbside pickup, they might not be clicking around at the normal rate of sales that they had before, but they're still open. They're still open because they have some drive-in, drive-through services, or they have at least some curbside pickup. So can you bring that on board? Those types of businesses are still going, but can you pivot to add those to your own business so that you can take advantage of people who don't want to go in stores anymore, but aren't adverse to getting out in the car and driving someplace? Most people like to get out and drive just to get out and drive. So my wife tags along with me when I go pick up food at the neighborhood restaurant, just because she's tired of being at home. So she just goes along for the ride. So curbside pickup is a perfect opportunity. Grocery stores, we found, have stayed open. Obviously, your big stores, Walmart and Harris Teeter and Target, who had a grocery store mixed in with their department store, they've survived, and in a lot of cases, thrived. So if you're in some type of retail store, selling clothes or something else, were you able to bring other products on into your inventory that people were looking for at that time? Now, I don't think you can be selling, ice cream in your shoe shop, but there might have been some style or some quantity or some category of quote unquote grocery items that you can bring on board in your inventory that people were looking for in a time of crisis like this. And if you already had a steady clientele and you already had a steady email list of all your clientele that you should all be keeping up with so that you can reach out to your clientele for regular sales and specials and promotions you're running. If you already had that technology set up, it would be very easy to put out a broadcast and saying, oh, by the way, we're also providing a few blah, 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 blah. Things that you can normally pick up at Target, but look, you can get them over here where we are as well. So being able to take advantage of the fact that grocery stores, for whatever reason, maintain hefty sales during the pandemic gives you an idea that, yeah, maybe there are a few things that I can bring online. Now, like I said, you're not going to bring everything online to grocery stores. You're not going to have milk and eggs. Well, I don't know. Maybe you will have milk and eggs. But you're not going to have everything a regular store has. But there's some things on grocery store shelves that people buy when they go to the grocery store. Think Target when people buy when they go to Target. Having a few of those items that are in great demand will probably help you bring in some additional sales over and beyond your normal menu of products that you are selling. So what are the services, what are the products can you bring online? Other businesses that have just been tooting along are health supply companies, home health companies in general. And there's an example here between those two. Say you're in the health supply company, business might be off a little bit, but if you were to pivot and offer some home health services, then you can add an additional service to your mix here, which will help offset some of your lost income. And vice versa, if you were only in home health, and you were only used to sending people out to people's homes to help them with their health needs, if all of a sudden you also had some products to sell, some health supplies to sell, every time you go, one of your home health care workers went to a home, they could provide a inventory list of the things that you have. And you say, next time I come, I can bring you any of these healthy things, any of these health related supplies. So you can pivot here within an industry. If you're only addressing, or you're only in one of the sectors of the industry, you can pivot to offering what's on a parallel business within the same industry, whether that's service-based or product-based. So you have some real brainstorming to do here, no matter what industry you're in. Can you pivot to another sector of your industry to take advantage of the current demands and current trends? That might have a lot to do with meal plan delivery. People are delivering meals all the time, and restaurants are delivering meals and so forth and so on. But again, if you're already in the home health care business, you could have added meals. Again, you have somebody coming to that home anyway, so why not bring a meal along with you when you came? So again, looking at your industry as a whole, looking at parallel companion industries. What can you take advantage of that's working in some of these other parallel sectors that you can really bring to your own business to help you with sales? Yeah, canned and jarred foods, goods, yeah, like grocery stores, you know, they're just skyrocketing. And wouldn't you know it, those people who sell equipment for people to do home canning and home jarring, those businesses have taken off as well. They've maintained even during the pandemic. And those businesses who could sell all that stuff online, of course, have even fared better, furniture sellers and manufacturers, they've gone up. I'm here in High Point, and you know, the furniture industry, after an initial period of complaining and worrying, they're pretty much back on par to where they were before. I don't hear a lot of complaints out of them now. They're going to back. I think they're going to have their spring market coming up in the spring. So yeah, they're back online. Pet services is a big one. Pet services is a real big one. Now, people are at home paying more attention to their pets. We took our dog to the veterinarian just a few weeks ago, and the veterinarian said he's more busier than he ever was. So he's doing things for pets that people before just didn't have the time for. We know our dog needs to have its teeth cleaned fairly often, and we just never have time to do it. But now, yeah, he's had his teeth cleaned twice. Game makers and sellers, people are at home more, they like to play games. Fitness equipment companies, people are at home more, they want to work out at home. Landscaping and yard care companies, business has not slowed down for them at all. And those people, number 16, gardening supply companies, those people that supply things for landscaping and yard care, those businesses have remained steady through the pandemic. This was an unusual one. I saw bread baking equipment and supply companies. Yeah, since people were at home, they had more of an idea to do things the old-fashioned way. You know, let's make some bread. Let's make some repairs to some clothes. Let's do some quilting and so forth and so on. So during this pandemic, even though there's been a slight turn down on some of these craft stores, their online businesses have stayed really high because people are at home more, they want to be doing more. I got 15 here, coffee subscription companies. So, you know, people are home more, maybe they're drinking more coffee. So instead of selling people, you know, 1 cup at a time, you offer them a subscription. You say, you know, for $100, unlimited coffee, you know, as much as you want. Subscription promotions are a relatively new concept, and every business should be looking at those. Telehealth, you know, that's video health conferencing. That's something that a lot of the industries, hospitals were getting into, but the pandemic has really cemented those into their industries, the health services industries. So that's something that's going to stay with us even after the pandemic. Tutoring, yeah, kids at home, us grandparents are taking care of twin granddaughters. We realize we're not as smart as we thought we were. So, you know, tutoring services are really a good thing to have available, especially nowadays it can be done online. And home beauty products. Yeah, you know, people are staying at home. Even though people are staying at home, they still want to look nice. All right, so those are, you know, list of thriving businesses. They tell me with the chamber that this list is going to be available at the chamber's website. So you'll be able to go there and look at that. So are you prepared? Can you pivot? You know, are you going to be able to develop a new menu of services or products? Can you get the necessary working capital on board so you can do those changes now? And certainly as you move forward, you know, put aside some working capital so that the next time we have an emergency, you are better positioned to withstand that. Have you taken a look at your staffing? Make sure it's adequate, but make sure it's also not wasteful. Make sure you have the necessary equipment, technology to meet the new demands of the new marketplace. Make sure you keep up with your cash flow analysis. You want to make sure you're not wasting money. And you know, you'll probably have to come up with a new marketing plan with a new marketing message so that you can broadcast to all your customers these new things that you brought on board that's going to make the life of your regular customers even better and even easier, even during this pandemic that we're going through right now. That should be your new message in marketing. And hopefully you have a new break-even point. You know, break-even point is that goal. If I can just break even, your business could stay afloat. So reworking your cash flow, reworking your expenses, hopefully it gives you a more reliable, more attainable break-even point, which will give you confidence going forward that you can keep the doors open. All right, well, that brings us to the top of the hour. I think the Chamber of Commerce staff might have something to say at this point, but if there was any questions, I guess we're going to open it up now, or maybe we have a chat box. You can put a question down. In the meantime, I've got my contact information here, businessplanforstartup@gmail.com. That's my email. You're welcome to send me an email if you have any questions on today's presentation or any other questions about small business. And I have a website too, businessplanforstartup.com. A lot of useful information in there about running a business and how to keep a business going. So you're welcome to take advantage of any of those resources. In the meantime, I'm not sure how we're doing questions. Diane, how are we doing questions here?
Either way, if people wanted to send them in the chat box or if they wanted to unmute themselves and ask questions. And I just wanted to say thank you. That is you are a wealth of information, and that is a really great kickoff to this series that we're going to be talking about kind of now and post-COVID. So it made me think about a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, we should mention the series. So we're going to be back every Thursday at noon with a different topic. A lot of it has to do specifically with COVID, but yeah, we invite everybody to come on back.
Yeah, absolutely. And the slides will be available, and we also will have this presentation available later. So it will be on the Reidsville Chamber website under Topics at 12. So that's reidsvillechamber.org, and you'll be able to click on the Topics at 12. So really excited about that. This series and being able to add to that library. So thank you, Ruben. And doesn't seem that we have any questions today.
Okay.
This will also air on our Spectrum Access channels, and it will be published by Rockingham Update and the Chamber. So we're really excited to be able to provide this to the businesses. And always thank you to Susan, our sponsor. And Ruben, if you have anything else you want to add?
No, I just invite everybody back next week.
Okay, awesome. So you can register for those, and we'll be pushing those links out. And that will be all for our very first in the series of post-COVID stuff. So we'll see you guys soon.
It's okay. Thanks a lot.